Alright everyone, I'm Matt and welcome back to another episode of the FPL Rundown. Welcome back to the FPL Rundown on NFTV Extra. Today we're going to be having a look back at the season so far, how the players have got on and how the league's shaping up. So without further ado, let's look at some of the stars of the season so far. If you've been watching on TV, you'll know a few of these players already have had a cracking start to the season and who you should be looking out for going into the next few weeks. So we'll start at the top end of the pitch, and I think there's one obvious answer to look at when you're looking at fantasy football in terms of value for money, and that is Dominic Calvert Lewin. The young lad has bagged so many goals this season, and he's actually one of the top scorers in FPL. He's got 37 points, and the lowest he scored in a game week is 6. He's not had any blanks so far, and he's looking like a really promising talent. I mentioned him in my first video. If you watched that, and one to look out for because he is cheap, and obviously with Ancelotti at the helm, Everton are looking a fantastic side this season, already sitting pretty at the top of the league, with James Rodriguez providing something in behind him as well. That could be a really interesting player going forward for them. And then, of course, can't forget Callum Wilson for us. I also mentioned him at the end of the video last week. He's our main man. He's our number 9, even though he doesn't wear the number 9. And he's going to be our main source of goals this season. God forbid he gets injured. But he's been taking our set pieces and he's bagged in every game except the Brighton game. But he made up for that with a brace in the last game against Burnley. Another player that I mentioned at the start of the series in the first video is Harry Kane. Now, he's a big money player in FPL, but I said he's guaranteed goals, and that's what he's done this season. He's had a pretty average start in some games, but he's had 2 massive games, one against Southampton and one against Man U. He's got 44 points in the forward position, but also behind him, he's teamed up nicely with Heung-min Son, who's got 45, a real goal-scoring midfielder who's guaranteed to get you some points in the midfield area. So he's one to look out for. A good option if you're looking to bring him in ahead of the next game week, maybe using your wild card or something like that. But he's a good midfield option who's guaranteed to get you goals and assists. And Harry Kane actually chipping in with a few assists as well as goals this season. So he's looking like he's developed his game and could be a really valuable asset this season. And moving backwards on the pitch, one player that I didn't mention in the first video, but I really wanted to, is Castagne for Leicester. So he signed from Atalanta in the summer, and we knew that he was going to be an attacking threat from the left-back position. He was brought in to replace Ben Chilwell, and we know they play dynamic attacking football with the fullbacks getting forward. And we knew he played in a midfield position for Atalanta, so it was going to convert well to his play as a Leicester player, and it's paid off. He's the top scoring defender in FPL, overtaking the Liverpool defenders from last season with Trent and Robertson. Not doing as well at the start of the season. I'm sure they'll kick on though. But Castagne is the one to look out for. And then it's one of our own in the goalkeeper position. And I have to say, I am very surprised because I was expecting Dubravka to obviously shine like he usually does, but obviously with his injury, it's been a big ask for Carl Darlow to step up into his shoes. And I'm not going to lie, I didn't realise that Carl Darlow was 29. I thought the lad is perpetually 25. He's just got that cheeky face that seems to never get older, but he's pushing on, and that experience showed in his performance against Spurs, where he made some fantastic saves and kept us in the game there. And eventually we dragged a point back, God knows how. But he's the second best goalkeeper in FPL so far after 4 game weeks, only behind Emilio Martinez for Aston Villa, who's only top because he saved a penalty. So Darlow statistically is one of the best keepers in the league right now. And when Dubravka comes back fit, it'll be a surprise to see Darlow go out of the team straight away. I'll expect Steve Bruce to let them fight for the place going forwards. But that's just a roundup of some of the star players in the first 4 game weeks. And now it's time to move on and look at how our league, the Newcastle Fans TV League, is shaping up on FPL. So here's how the top 10 stands. And right all the way out in front is Mark Franklin with Sparky FC. 93 points in the last game week, 295 points in total. That is mad for 4 game weeks. But as you can see, it's very close. In the top 10, there's only 20 points between 10th and 1st. That could be made up in 1 game week. But that is very impressive from all of you guys in the top 10. Well done for getting up there. Oh, God, I suppose I should tell you where I am. I'm all the way down in 198th with 201 points, comfortably mid-table, like the team I love and support. So I'm not doing great, but I'm hopefully going to kick on and do a little bit better because I brought in players like Kane and Calvert Lewin going forwards. And the best Newcastle Fans TV admin is actually Liam. He's sitting in 44th position. He's doing really well. He's top in our admin league and he's doing really well. So maybe we'll get him on a video in the coming weeks and he can impart some of his wisdom, tell me how to actually play the stupid game instead of sitting mid-table and getting bang average points week in, week out. So this part of the show is where we're going to bring guests onto the show and have a chat with them about their teams, how they're getting on and what their plans are for the FPL future. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Thomas in, who was third in the league after the first game. He's dropped back a little bit, but he's still sitting pretty in the top of the league. So we'll get him on and we'll have a chat about what he's got to say. So welcome to the FPL Rundown on NFTV Extra. Thomas, how are you doing, lad?
I'm doing very good. How are you doing, mate?
I'm not too bad. Have you been watching much football in lockdown or just stuck in the house?
Stuck in the house for the most part, you know. Not had much of a chance to watch too much. Watched some of the international fixtures over last weekend, but not super exciting to be honest. So looking forward to the Premier League coming back, really.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's going to be a good one. So without any further ado, then, this is the FPL Rundown after all. So you had a really, really good start to the season. In the first week, you were actually third in the Newcastle Fans TV League, which surprised me. I'm not no disrespect to you at all.
Surprised me as well, to be fair, mate.
But if we have a quick look back at your team, you managed to bag 99 points in that first week. So if you could just give us a little insight into what made you choose that team going into the first week. Obviously, you've got a couple big hitters in there, but it's quite a good team.
Yeah, well, obviously, I think Vardy and Salah were sort of on my radar from the start, and then I had to get a couple of Newcastle players in there. Unfortunately, because we did all right, I got a decent few points from those two, and then I was quite optimistic about how Wolves were going to do. That's why I've got Cody and Jimenez, and then a few of the other ones were sort of just to, you know, fill up the quota. Although I guess the only disappointment, despite getting 99 points, is that both of the Spurs players didn't do brilliantly. But I guess I was sort of fortunate because Willian had a really good game as well, and he was a bit of a gamble because I didn't know how he was going to fare for Arsenal. But relatively happy, you know. It was a decent haul from the first week for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you've done really well since. I mean, you're not quite up in the heights of third at the minute. You're down in 36th, but it's much, much better than my 198th. You've got 250 points, which isn't too far behind the lead, to be fair. How's the progression gone? Yeah, from the first week, have you...
Since the first week, it's gone downhill slightly. And I've had a couple of weeks where I've been saved from having a stinker by sort of one marquee player. So I had Son in when obviously he scored 4 goals. And then I had Vardy in who I'd captained. And then Salah saved me another week. So sort of I've had a few consistent performances from a couple of my players, but I've sort of been saved quite frequently. It's just the first week was such a good start that trying to keep that going is always going to be tricky, you know.
Have you managed to use any of your boosts yet? I know I've used my wild card. Have you used any of those? Card as well.
So I had a few injuries. I always feel like it's good to use the wild card rather than the free hit early on, because then you can, once you've had a couple of game weeks, I think I used it after the second game week. So once you've had a couple to sort of get a sense of where teams might be, obviously things can change a lot after that. It's good to sort of use it and get a few players in and make a few changes. And then the free hits you can use to sort of stack up a couple of free transfers if you're struggling going into a week. So I feel like it didn't necessarily pay off when I used it, but hopefully in the long run, it should be good for me, I think. We'll have to see, I guess.
Yeah, I was a bit unsure about using mine because obviously with a couple of injuries and then the international break that's just happened was coming up, I was unsure, but it seems to have paid off. I've got a few more points. Is there any players this season that have kind of surprised you with how well they've done? Earlier in the video, I touched on how well Calvert Lewin and players like that have surprised us this season, bagging a few points in the game. Is there anyone that's really stood out that you've maybe brought into your team as well?
I guess not necessarily that I brought in, because obviously I had Callum Wilson in first week and I got rid of him. And then since then he has, because I haven't had him in, obviously he scored in the first game, but I haven't had him in the sort of following few weeks, which is a little bit disappointing because obviously he's got 4 goals now, penalty against Spurs, and then 2 goals against Burnley as well. So I guess he's surprised me sort of pleasantly, because obviously we needed, in terms of real life football, not just fantasy, we needed those goals and someone to score. So I'm sort of disappointed that I didn't back him beyond the first week. But he's definitely surprised me, but sort of pleasantly, obviously, because he's getting goals for us, and that's what we need.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if we're looking forward then in terms of the FPL, we're going to have a quick look at the team you've picked for the next week. Obviously, this is subject to change before the deadline. You might have a last minute bit of inspiration. But if we have a quick look of who you've chosen and why people might want to pick these players that you've brought in. So you've gone for a 4-3-3 by the looks of it. Can you just talk us through all the players that you picked and why you've gone for Salah as a captain in the Merseyside derby?
Well, see, this is the tricky thing. As you can see, I have 2 Everton players and Salah as well. And I feel like the Merseyside derby will probably be quite a high-scoring game. So I'm not necessarily expecting Luca Digne to get a clean sheet, but he often contributes with assists and gets goals from free kicks every now and then. So he's in there because I expect it to be high-scoring, because obviously Everton are doing very well at the moment and Liverpool will definitely have a point to prove, and Everton don't necessarily have a brilliant record historically in the Merseyside derby. So I think it probably will be quite a close game. I'm hoping for a lot of goals. Obviously, Salah, I've sort of gambled on Salah being sort of the leader for this sort of Liverpool resurgence that they need after that defeat against Villa. So we'll see how that goes. I have Cody and Jimenez from Wolves because obviously they had a shocker against West Ham a little while ago, but I feel like I'm still pretty positive about how their season's going to go. And I think Leeds, Wolves will probably be quite a close game, but hopefully Wolves can just nick it and I'll get the clean sheet for Connor Cody there. Then I've gone for the 2 Chelsea players. I've got Reece James and Kai Havertz. I think Kai Havertz is slowly sort of finding his feet a little bit in the Premier League, and Reece James has been very solid so far. I think he's chipped in with a goal, maybe a couple of goals. I'm not quite sure. And so we'll see how that goes. Southampton have been all right, but I feel like Chelsea should have that one easily. Then obviously I've got Saint-Maximin in the middle. I'm not necessarily expecting a haul of points from him, but I sort of, it's always good to have a Newcastle player in and around the team. And we'll see how it goes, I guess.
No, I mean, there's news today that Saint-Maximin's being rewarded with a new contract as well, so we'll see if he signs that, and that's some really good news for the club. I'm not actually sure if I've got any Newcastle players. At the start of the season, I had both Saint-Maximin and Callum Wilson in.
But last week.
Yeah, but if we have a quick look, I mean, not that anyone wants to know my team because I'm rubbish at this, apparently. I showed them the first week and then I had a stinker. So if we have a quick look at me, I know for a fact that I benched Digne. Which is interesting that you're starting, because I completely understand where you're coming from in terms of chipping in with the goals and assists. But so my team's changed quite a lot since the first week. I'm actually in a league at work, which means that I have to have 3 Leeds players in my squad at all times. So maybe I wouldn't have those players in if I wasn't in that league. But I've gone for Captain Harry Kane because he always seems to perform well against London clubs, and West Ham, although they, like you said, they did have a good performance against Wolves. Really can't see them doing well against Spurs, especially after they picked apart Man United. I'm taking a risk with De Bruyne because apparently he's not likely to play. The only way he can play is with an injection, which he's refusing to have. So I'm starting him in there, but I don't expect him to take part, which is why Foden's my first sub, who'll probably just slip in there for him. And then Daniel Podence is a doubt because of Cristiano Ronaldo having contracted COVID-19, obviously the whole Portugal team. They've all tested negative since, but there's always that doubt in there. And I've been watching a lot of Ben White. Obviously, Brighton tore us apart, and I think Ben White was a fantastic in that game. And he's not really kicked on. Like, obviously, Leeds were desperate to get him back, saying like Rolls-Royce footballer, and he does look a talent. But I'm hoping that he can kind of put in a shift against Palace. Obviously, I've got Palace defender as well, Mitchell, who's been standing in. I think Van Aanholt's injured. I think that's the right side. But I'm hoping for some big points. I've vice captain Calvert Lewin because I think he might bag against Liverpool. Liverpool haven't looked the strongest at the back, and Calvert Lewin's obviously causing problems, and he's scoring for England as well as Everton. He looks in fine fettle. Going into the derby, and Everton will be hungry for this. I mean, they're buzzing at the top of the league, but they won't want it. They won't want it to end.
I mean, I guess that's always the challenge of fantasy, is having, if you have some sort of marquee strikers and sort of marquee defenders, like you've got Van Dijk and Calvert Lewin in there, and obviously, if you have if Liverpool don't concede, then that's great for Van Dijk, but not great. So it's always a bit of a balancing act, and making sure that you sort of maximise the consistency and don't sort of It's sometimes good to have defenders that will contribute going forward, but sometimes it's better to. It's always a tricky one. You have to see how it goes.
In terms of looking forward as well, obviously we've got our first game back. I think it's against Man United, which is obviously we've had the news about it being behind a paywall for fans to watch it. But in terms of the game itself, are you optimistic that we're going to pull off a result? Obviously, they just got hammered by Spurs. Do you think they're going to be out for revenge, or they'll capitulate like they did against Spurs?
I guess it's a bit of a tricky one. Obviously, I've got saint-maximin in my fantasy team, but I don't necessarily think that really means that I think we're going to do especially well. Obviously, there's the challenge that Man United have at the moment where they don't really have an out-and-out striker. Obviously, they have Cavani, but he's unavailable to play. And they can either put Rashford or Greenwood or someone. I reckon they'll probably start Greenwood up front. So it'll be interesting to see, really. We're always a little bit inconsistent. You never quite know what to expect. Sometimes we perform brilliantly. Obviously, last season we beat Man United with Matt Longstaff getting his debut goal. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. It's a bit of a tricky one. If I had to sort of plumb for a particular scoreline, I reckon it's probably likely to be a closer game than you'd think. But I think Man United might just edge it. I think they have the quality, unless we're at our best, which we might be. You never know. But I think Man United might just edge it. I would go for 2-1 if I had to pick a score.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you say, it's going to be a close game. Hopefully it's a close game. You know, I don't want them running away with like 5-0 or anything. I'd love us to do that, you know. But yeah, it's definitely going to be a close one. But because you've gone for a Man U win, which I would probably have predicted in the first place, I'm going to be optimistic. I'm going to say we're going to nick a 1-0, not a 1-0 win, and I'm hopefully Callum Wilson's going to get on the score sheet again. And I'm hoping we play some nice football, because I've not got a lot of faith in Bruce. We've had a good start to the season, and the Burnley game was a must-win, really. I think one of the lads, I think it was Adam on one of the live streams, said that if we lose against Burnley, you know, that should be Bruce's head, because they've had one of the worst starts to the seasons they've ever had. So if we hadn't won that, there was a lot of pressure on him, but we did. So hopefully we managed to pull off a result against Man U, and hopefully all of those players that we've got in our FPL teams can bag as well.
Let's hope so.
For now, thanks for joining us, Thomas, on the FPL Rundown. Have a good weekend. I hope you enjoy the game. And for now, lads, if you've liked the video, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe to this channel and also Newcastle Fans TV. And I'll catch you in the next video.